Imagine being alone in total darkness, floating somewhere above the earth. Suddenly, shapes appear, shapes not from this world. They say humans are fragile, they tried to prove it. But one man turned the tables in minutes. Yes, minutes, not hours, not days, minutes. What they thought was control, he used against them. Tonight you'll hear 3 shocking truths. 1. How this ordinary man survived a torture attempt by beings no human had ever seen. 2. What strange powers the deep void species apparently have, and why they underestimated him. 3. The twist that could change everything we think about life beyond Earth. This isn't science fiction. According to multiple reports from sources in urban UK and beyond, this happened in a hidden orbit chamber, above England, somewhere over the North Sea. The truth behind this encounter will shock you. The story is not just about aliens. It's about human resilience, instinct, and something deeper that most of us cannot even imagine. Let me show you exactly how this happened. It all started in urban UK, in a city that looks ordinary by day. Streets, buses, cafes, but one night something happened that would change everything. Our main character, let's call him Daniel, wasn't a scientist or an astronaut. He was just an ordinary man working late in a small lab on the outskirts of Scotland. According to sources, he had an unusual hobby, observing satellites and strange lights in the night sky. One evening, Daniel noticed something odd. A dark shadow moved across the sky faster than any plane. No blinking lights, no sound, just a sleek, black shape. His heart raced. He knew it wasn't normal. Suddenly he felt it, a pull, not like gravity, something else. Before he could react, everything went black. He woke up somewhere else, a place so strange no words could describe it. The walls glowed faintly. Circular lights floated mid-air. This was the orbit chamber. According to reports, it orbits above the UK, hidden from radar and satellites, and he was not alone. The creatures were unlike anything on Earth. Locals in UFO circles call them the deep void species, tall, thin, with reflective eyes. Their movements were silent but precise. Some sources describe their skin as semi-transparent, showing strange patterns beneath. Daniel had never seen anything like it. They didn't speak, not in words we understand, but Daniel felt it. They tried to communicate, to test him, to break him. Their torture was psychological first. Hallucinations, voices, sudden shifts in gravity. His mind raced. Yet there were small signs of human advantage. Daniel noticed patterns. Every time they moved, their attention shifted briefly. Their orbit chamber had loops and gaps in security. Mini surprise, Daniel found an object in the chamber that looked like a control panel but seemed organic, almost alive. He could not understand it, yet touching it caused a reaction. Another twist, these beings were extremely curious. They expected fear. Daniel gave none. He observed them, studied them, and waited. Daniel realized something crucial. This was more than a test of strength. It was about understanding, about adaptation. And in that moment he knew he could turn the tables. Before we reveal exactly what happened, let's step back. Why would beings from beyond Earth risk coming so close to urban UK? And why this man? Experts who study unexplained encounters say it often involves ordinary humans who notice something others ignore. Daniel's habit of watching satellites wasn't random, it made him a target. Plot twist, the deep void species weren't just experimenting on him, they were gathering data on human reactions. Our human mind, they thought, was predictable. They assumed logic and fear would dominate. They were wrong. But here's another detail that changes the story. The orbit chamber wasn't a simple spaceship, it seemed alive. Sections moved on their own. Lights pulsed in patterns that might have been a language. Some researchers speculate these chambers exist across Earth's orbit, hidden, undetected, watching us quietly. Mini surprise, according to witnesses who observed lights in Scotland and northern England around the same time, strange beams of light pulsed from the sky in synchronization. Could this chamber be communicating with something else? Possibly. By now, Daniel had mapped a small part of the chamber. He noticed a routine in the deep void species patrols. Their attention would drift, even for a few seconds. That was all he needed. He prepared, not with weapons, he had none, not with technology, only human intuition and focus. The stage was set, and here's where things get really interesting. Daniel's first challenge was simple: survive, but simple doesn't mean easy. The deep void species were observing him closely. Their methods were subtle but terrifying. Hallucinations that felt real, sounds that came from nowhere, sudden shifts in gravity. One moment he floated, the next he crashed to the floor. But Daniel noticed something. Every time they tried to confuse him, there was a pattern. Their attacks were brief, predictable, small pauses, moments of distraction. And here's the first shocker. In just a few minutes, Daniel discovered he could manipulate one part of the orbit chamber. He found a panel embedded in the wall, organic, almost alive. When he touched it, lights flickered and a door opened. The species didn't expect it. They hadn't anticipated human curiosity. Daniel realized something crucial. Fear is powerful, but observation is stronger. He studied the creatures. Their movements, the sounds they made, even how they blinked. In that instant, he understood they were not invincible. Mini surprise, one of the deep void species tried to approach him directly. Their hand-like appendages reached out, but Daniel dodged, not just physically, psychologically. He mimicked a movement he'd seen one of the creatures make, and it froze, like they recognized him as an anomaly. Think about this, a human, ordinary by all measures, had stopped one of the most advanced species from completing a test. In minutes. Daniel wasn't done. He explored the orbit chamber further. He found another feature, an orbit interface. It allowed him to subtly change the chamber's environment. Gravity, lights, even airflow, he experimented carefully. One small adjustment and a previously locked section opened. Plot twist, the deep void species panicked, but only slightly. Their confidence was cracking. Daniel's awareness was something they didn't calculate. They had underestimated the simplest human quality, adaptability. He used another tactic. Observing their reactions, he noticed that the species responded to irregular patterns. So he created small disruptions, moving left instead of right, pausing mid-step, even humming quietly. These tiny changes confused them further. Here's the first major wow. According to reports from UK urban observers monitoring strange lights that night, the orbit chamber itself seemed to respond. Beams of light shifted unpredictably. Pulses appeared in sequences that weren't normal. Daniel was not just surviving, he was controlling the environment. And the species who tried to dominate were now reacting to him. Mini surprise number 2, he found a hidden observation window in the chamber. From it he could see Earth below. Scotland's coastline, England's cities, even a few glowing towns. It made him realize how small, but how resilient, humans really are. By now he had started a subtle mental game. He anticipated their moves, set traps using the chamber itself, and waited for a perfect opening. In minutes he had turned the torture test into a controlled environment where he had the upper hand. Comparison moment. Imagine walking into a room blindfolded, facing beings who can manipulate gravity, sound, and perception. Most humans would panic. Daniel didn't. He observed, adapted, and acted. And here comes the kicker. One of the deep void species, previously dominant, actually froze when Daniel manipulated the interface. It was the first sign that they recognized him not as prey, but as an unpredictable variable. Another shocker, sources suggest that the orbit chamber's system, previously thought autonomous, was reacting to his thoughts. Almost as if the chamber itself sensed human ingenuity. Could it be alive? Daniel didn't know. But he knew it could be used to his advantage. Mini surprise 3, he discovered a section that seemed to store data, holographic symbols floating mid-air. By touching certain symbols, he triggered responses in the deep void species. He realized he could communicate, or at least manipulate, their behavior without speaking. In under 20 minutes, Daniel had transformed from captive to strategist, from target to operator. The deep void species, masters of the orbit chamber, were now reacting to his every move. And here's the tease for what comes next. If you think that's impressive, wait until you hear how he completely outmaneuvered them, and revealed a secret that could explain why they even came to Earth. By now, Daniel had begun to understand the orbit chamber, and the beings inside it, better than they expected. What first seemed like random movements and attacks now revealed patterns, almost like a rhythm he could follow. Mini surprise, the deep void species, according to sources, rely on a combination of light, sound, and subtle telepathy to manipulate prey. They can sense fear and anticipation, and their orbit chambers amplify these reactions. Daniel realized he could use that against them. He began small. Slight deviations in his behavior caused the creatures to pause, then more daring moves. He touched parts of the chamber walls that appeared dormant, but suddenly panels shifted, revealing hidden spaces. One was a control node that looked almost like a translucent tree. According to sources, this node connects to the orbit chamber's environmental systems. By subtly pressing certain patterns, Daniel could manipulate gravity, light, and even air currents. Here's the first contrast. Before, the species controlled him completely. Now he controlled the environment and they were forced to adapt. But there was a bigger layer. The chamber wasn't just a vessel, it was a learning organism. It seemed to record and analyze human responses. Daniel understood that each action he took could permanently alter how the deep void species viewed humans. That realization gave him leverage. Plot twist: one of the species attempted to intimidate him with sudden gravity shifts, simulating a free fall into the chamber's void. Daniel didn't panic. Instead, he noted the timing, the direction of movement, and even the subtle vibrations in the chamber floor. Then he countered, using a sequence that triggered an unexpected response in the species' neural pattern. One froze completely. Mini surprise: sources suggest that this freezing reaction is extremely rare, even among other captured humans. Daniel had achieved it in minutes. He experimented further. The orbit chamber had areas that resembled observation rooms, data storage hubs, and even something like an organic engine. By pressing symbols on floating holographic panels, he could redirect energy beams. These beams weren't weapons, they seemed to communicate with the deep void species' neural systems. By controlling them, he subtly influenced their decisions. Here's a key insight: the species were masters of direct intimidation, but they were vulnerable to indirect strategy. Human ingenuity and unpredictability gave Daniel a rare advantage. Another twist: Daniel discovered a hidden map of the chamber's orbit trajectory. It wasn't stationary. According to sources, it rotates slowly above the UK, hidden from radar and satellites. But now he could see the chamber's weak points. The deep void species had no backup plan. They relied on humans reacting with fear. Daniel's next step was bold. He began mimicking the creature's own patterns. Their hand-like appendages, their blinking sequences, even their movement speed. Observers say this kind of mimicry can disrupt the species' synchronization. And it worked. Mini surprise: by the time an hour passed, Daniel was not just surviving. He was anticipating their moves and controlling parts of the chamber. But the real shock came next. He noticed a pattern in the species' interaction with the orbit chamber. They avoided certain dark zones. These zones weren't marked, weren't obvious, but Daniel, by observing shadows and light reflections, found them. And in one zone he discovered what could be their central hub, a core that seemed alive, pulsing with energy. Sources suggest this core regulates the chamber and possibly communicates with others in orbit. Daniel realized he could access it, but it was extremely risky. One wrong move, and the species would detect it immediately. Yet he acted. Using the dark zones and his knowledge of the chamber's environmental systems, he approached the core. As he touched it, lights flickered across the orbit chamber, holograms shifted, and for a moment it was as if the deep void species were watching themselves through human eyes. Mini surprise: one of the creatures recoiled, an unprecedented reaction. Daniel had forced a first contact moment, but in reverse. The chamber, the species, even the orbit system, they were responding to him. And this brings us to the most shocking discovery of all. Daniel's confidence had grown, but he knew the stakes were higher than ever. The deep void species had begun to realize he was no ordinary human. Each minute he remained in control, their surprise turned into something dangerous: calculation. The orbit chamber wasn't just a prison or a lab, it was a test. Sources suggest it was designed to measure human adaptability. Every hallucination, every gravity shift, every sound or light pattern was data. And Daniel had turned their own system against them. Mini surprise: he discovered that the chamber was not autonomous entirely. Parts of it were organic, alive, and highly responsive, but still vulnerable to deliberate manipulation. The deeper he went, the more he realized he could influence the species' perception of reality. Daniel had a plan. Using the dark zones he had discovered earlier, he approached the chamber's pulsing core again. This time he was ready to do more than observe. He pressed sequences on the holographic interface, mimicking signals he had noticed the species reacting to. Lights flared across the chamber. Sounds, previously chaotic, aligned into patterns. The deep void species froze, confused, and then began reacting to him instead of the other way around. Here's the first major shock: Daniel had created a feedback loop. The species' attempts to dominate him now reflected back, forcing them to adjust. The chamber itself seemed to pulse in rhythm with his movements. He was, according to sources, effectively controlling the orbit system, and for a brief window, controlling the species' behavior. Plot twist, one of the beings, previously the most aggressive, approached him, but instead of attack, it mirrored his gestures. For the first time, human initiative dictated the interaction. Mini surprise, sources suggest this mimicry is unprecedented. Other humans captured in orbit chambers never achieved this. Daniel had unlocked a key principle. Unpredictability, observation, and adaptation can overturn even the most advanced intelligence. The chamber reacted in another way. Certain doors opened, revealing internal corridors. Daniel explored them and found what looked like data nodes, small organic hubs storing information. By touching them in the right sequence, he could access chamber logs, understanding the species, movements, their experiments, and even their purpose. And here's the kicker, the species weren't just studying human weakness. They were studying human choice under extreme stress. They wanted to see if someone could remain conscious, aware, and adaptive, and Daniel had passed every test, not by following rules but by breaking expectations. Another revelation, the orbit chamber was connected to others, potentially in multiple orbits over Earth. Every interaction humans had with these chambers fed into a larger network. By taking control of one, Daniel might have sent shockwaves across the species' entire system. Mini surprise, the chamber emitted a sequence of lights that matched Earth's urban grid. Observers in northern England and Scotland later reported seeing pulsing patterns in the night sky, as if the chamber was communicating. Daniel's actions may have triggered this global response. But Daniel wasn't done. He realized the species' key vulnerability, predictability. They could manipulate fear, but they couldn't handle deliberate uncertainty. Every time he moved differently, they froze. Every time he approached the core with intent, they reacted, but reacted wrongly. Then came the final, most dramatic move. He pressed a pattern on the core that created a loop in their neural feedback. For a few seconds, the deep void species were disoriented. The chamber itself vibrated lightly, almost like it was alive, responding to Daniel's command. In those moments, he effectively had the upper hand, not through strength, but through intelligence, observation, and courage. Mini surprise, according to sources, the species emitted sounds that seemed like distress signals, but unlike any human could hear. For the first time, they showed signs of panic. Daniel had flipped the script entirely. In just minutes, Daniel transformed from captive to orchestrator. The chamber designed to break humans had been used against its creators. And the revelation that stunned him most, the deep void species weren't malevolent, they were curious. Their torture was experimental, and Daniel's ingenuity taught them something new. Here's the ultimate twist. The orbit chamber's system, the species, behavior, even their global coordination, all suggested one thing: humans are unpredictable. And that unpredictability may be exactly why Earth remains unclaimed, unexplored, and free. By the end of his encounter, Daniel wasn't just safe. He had redefined the interaction between human and deep void species. His actions had proven that human ingenuity, resilience, and observation could overcome even the most advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. So what does all this mean for us today? It shows that even when facing overwhelming odds, awareness, adaptability, and courage are more powerful than strength or fear. Daniel's experience, hidden in orbit above urban UK, is a reminder that humans have latent capabilities we rarely test, until confronted with the unknown. Daniel's encounter is more than a thrilling story. It's a lesson about human capability, observation, and resilience. Even in the most extreme situations, floating in an orbit chamber, surrounded by the deep void species, human ingenuity can turn the impossible into the manageable. Mini surprise, experts suggest that ordinary humans often underestimate their ability to adapt under stress. Daniel, an everyday man from urban UK, demonstrated how quick observation and strategic thinking can outweigh brute force, even against advanced extraterrestrial beings. First, let's break down the short-term implications, if what Daniel experienced is accurate. 1. Humans can influence alien systems. This means that intelligence and creativity may matter more than technology in first contact scenarios. 2. Observation and pattern recognition are critical. Daniel survived because he noticed small, repeatable behaviors in the deep void species and the orbit chamber itself. These insights gave him leverage. 3. Adaptability is undervalued. Human adaptability, how quickly we respond to unpredictable circumstances, can be a defensive tool more powerful than any weapon. Think about this for urban UK. Imagine situations on Earth in daily life where speed, observation, and adaptability could make the difference between failure and success. Daniel's encounter mirrors this on an extreme scale, but the principle is the same. Plot twist, there is also a psychological layer. By refusing to succumb to fear, Daniel forced the species to adapt to him instead. In other words, calm awareness can alter even overwhelming external systems. That's a lesson that applies to anyone, from city streets in London to high-stakes workplaces across Scotland. Long-term implications are even more fascinating. If deep void species, or any intelligence, monitor humans, they may also learn about human creativity and problem-solving. This could shape their strategies in future encounters. Daniel's improvisation might influence how extraterrestrial beings perceive human capability. Mini surprise, some analysts speculate that the orbit chamber itself is part of a wider network. If so, Daniel's actions could ripple across this network. By asserting control and demonstrating unpredictability, he may have changed data patterns that influence every similar system in orbit. From a practical standpoint, there's another takeaway. Systems, whether alien, technological, or organizational, are often vulnerable to unpredictable human action. Daniel didn't have weapons or advanced tools. He had observation, patience, and adaptability. That's a powerful reminder that human ingenuity can surpass even advanced design. Consider UK cities like Glasgow or Birmingham. Our daily routines are structured and predictable. But Daniel's story encourages us to value observation and flexibility, even in small ways, whether in navigating social systems, workplaces, or personal challenges. Mini surprise, sources suggest that during the encounter, Daniel's presence may have caused the orbit chamber to emit light pulses detectable on Earth. If true, this shows that even small human actions can influence systems we don't fully understand, on a scale previously thought impossible. Contrast is key here. Before Daniel, humans in orbit chambers were passive, they reacted, they feared. Daniel flipped that dynamic. This shows a broader truth. Humans are more powerful than their circumstances suggest, if they act strategically, calmly, and creatively. Experts also note an emotional layer. Survival is not just physical, it's psychological. Daniel's calmness under pressure forced the deep void species to confront him as an anomaly. This underscores an essential lesson. Emotional control in crises can be more decisive than any tool or weapon. Another long-term implication relates to awareness. If other orbit chambers exist, as sources suggest, they may be monitoring more than fear. They may be cataloging innovation, problem-solving, and unpredictability. Humanity's potential to influence these observations depends on cultivating awareness, curiosity, and adaptability, the very traits Daniel exhibited. Mini surprise, consider what this means for UK urban populations. Ordinary individuals, often unnoticed, could demonstrate profound influence through small but deliberate actions. Daniel's example scales this up to cosmic significance. Finally, the story illustrates interconnectedness. Daniel's small actions affected not just himself but potentially the deep void species, data networks, the orbit chamber, and even Earth observers who witnessed the pulsing lights. One human's choices can ripple outward. The ultimate takeaway. The encounter is a reminder that vigilance, observation, and adaptability are not abstract traits. They are survival tools. Whether in space, urban UK, or daily life, these skills define how humans interact with systems far beyond their immediate understanding. Before we wrap up, there's one final thing you need to know. Daniel's story isn't just a tale of survival. It's a blueprint. It's proof that intelligence, calm, and strategy, not fear or panic, can shift even the most overwhelming odds in your favor. By the time Daniel's encounter ended, everything had changed, not just for him, but potentially for the deep void species and for humanity itself. He returned to Earth with more than survival. He returned with understanding, proof that human ingenuity can match even the most advanced intelligence. Mini surprise, sources suggest that Daniel did not immediately reveal the full scope of his experience. Only fragments were reported by urban UK observers who saw unusual lights, but the full implications are staggering. Here's the first twist in the final reveal. The deep void species did not intend harm in the way humans imagine. Their torture was an experimental protocol. They wanted to test resilience, observation, and adaptability. Daniel's responses showed that humans could exceed expectations. In a way, he taught them about human unpredictability. Another twist, the orbit chamber's core which he manipulated was more than a control system. It was a learning hub. By interacting with it, Daniel may have rewritten how the chamber and the species network perceived human behavior. That means one man's decisions made under extreme stress could influence extraterrestrial perception of all humans. Mini surprise, observers in Scotland and northern England later reported pulses of light in the sky, as if the chamber communicated outward. Could this be Daniel's influence spreading across systems? Possibly. Daniel's final lesson is clear. Fear is predictable. Observation, strategy, and calm unpredictability are not. In minutes, he turned what seemed like inevitable torture into control. His experience proves that even ordinary humans can shift extraordinary systems in unexpected ways. Contrast, when Daniel entered the orbit chamber, he was completely vulnerable. By the end, he was effectively orchestrating the interaction. That reversal from powerless to empowered is a template for facing any extreme challenge. But there's one last twist. According to sources, Daniel sensed something deeper about the species. They were curious, not cruel. They wanted to understand humans, but they also wanted to learn something beyond survival. Something about decision-making, choice, and adaptation. In a way, the deep void species were mirrors, showing humanity what it is capable of under pressure. Mini surprise, Daniel's interaction may have permanently altered how these beings approach humans. One ordinary man's decisions in a hidden orbit chamber above the UK may have reshaped extraterrestrial data about humanity. Emotional close, Daniel's story isn't just about aliens or orbit chambers. It's about human resilience, awareness, and the power of observation. Even in overwhelming circumstances, the human mind and spirit can adapt, strategize, and overcome. That's the real takeaway. If this opened your eyes, imagine what it could mean for ordinary challenges, stress at work, complex problems in daily life, or unexpected crises. Observation, calm, and deliberate action can turn situations around. And remember this, one small deliberate action can ripple outward, changing systems, perceptions, and outcomes in ways you never imagined. Daniel's story is proof. Daniel's encounter with the deep void species teaches us several powerful lessons. Let's recap. 1. Observation beats fear. Daniel survived because he noticed small patterns in the deep void species' behavior. Understanding even subtle cues gave him control. 2. Adaptability is a superpower. Every time the species tried something new, Daniel adjusted. Humans are capable of rapid, creative responses when they stay calm and aware. 3. Unpredictability is strength. The deep void species expected fear and routine. Daniel's unpredictable strategies forced them to react and fail. 4. Small actions ripple outward. One man's decisions in a hidden orbit chamber above the UK may have influenced extraterrestrial perception of humanity. But the story doesn't end there. Daniel's experience reminds us that we all face orbit chambers in life, moments of extreme stress or overwhelming challenge. The same principles apply: observe, adapt, and act deliberately. Mini surprise, experts in resilience suggest that ordinary humans underestimate the power of focus under pressure. Daniel's story proves that we are far more capable than we realize. Now here's what we want you to do. Subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want to explore more real-life encounters, mysteries, and hidden truths above and beyond Earth. Comment below, what would you do if you were in Daniel's place? Could you remain calm under pressure? Share your thoughts, let's discuss. Watch our next video to uncover other accounts of extraordinary human encounters with the unknown. Each story builds on the last, revealing deeper secrets of human resilience. Join our newsletter to get exclusive insights and unseen evidence from witnesses and researchers in the UK and beyond. Every month, you'll get analysis of mysterious events, hidden technologies, and survival strategies inspired by real-life experiences like Daniel's. Mini surprise, imagine knowing how ordinary people have influenced systems far larger than themselves. Alien encounters, secret experiments, and unexplained phenomena. That's what our community explores together. Remember, Daniel's story isn't just about extraterrestrial encounters. It's about potential. Every person has latent capabilities waiting to be tested. Awareness, adaptability, and courage can turn even extreme circumstances in your favor. And here's the final thought. The universe may be vast, mysterious, and full of beings we cannot fully comprehend. But humans have something unique: curiosity, intelligence, and resilience. Daniel's orbit chamber experience proves it. So if this story opened your eyes, take it with you. Observe more closely, act more deliberately, and never underestimate your own ability to turn the tables when it matters most. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, engage, and keep exploring the unknown with us. The universe is bigger than you think, and so are you.